The day began like any other, with the sky above Earth's major cities flickering a soft blue, the hum of daily life vibrating through the streets and across the airwaves. But everything changed when the message came. At first, it was only a whisper, an encrypted signal intercepted by Earth's most advanced satellites. Then the message itself appeared on every screen in the world, a simple phrase, broadcast in every language known to humanity. We are the Vantori. We have waited long enough. World leaders rushed into emergency meetings, scrambling to decipher the message. The alien race had made contact, but their intentions remained unclear. Some feared it was a trick. Others, more hopeful, thought it was a prelude to the promised peace the Earth had yearned for. They could not have been more wrong. Hours later, Earth's military radar detected the first sign of the Vantori. An enormous ship, unlike anything humanity had ever seen, descending slowly through the atmosphere. Its sleek, almost organic shape shimmered against the backdrop of the setting sun, reflecting light in ways that made the craft look as though it were made of liquid metal. It was far too large to be a weapon, and its smooth contours suggested a technological elegance never before observed. Its arrival sent an electric shock of awe through the planet, followed by a wave of nervousness. The alien ship hovered above New York, a city that had long since rebuilt itself from the chaos of previous global conflicts. The population watched in rapt attention as the Vantori ship hung silently in the sky. It emitted no sound, no visible propulsion, only the quiet hum of an unknown energy field that radiated outward, displacing the clouds and causing a ripple in the air. The world held its breath as the Vantori made their first attempt at communication. A figure appeared on every screen, in every home, office, and terminal. The alien's form was both humanoid and completely foreign, its skin a smooth, translucent blue, with intricate patterns pulsing beneath its surface. Its eyes glowed softly, and its voice, deep yet calm, echoed through the globe. "We are the Vantori," the voice said, sending ripples of unease across the world. "You have long been known to us, humanity. We have watched, and we have waited. It is time for you to understand the meaning of your nickname." At that moment, a shiver ran down the spine of every human who heard those words. Nickname. The concept seemed harmless at first, but as the alien continued, the truth began to unfold. "The galaxy," the Vantori said, "has known you by a name. A name that evokes both awe and fear. The name you have earned, Hornet's Nest." The screen flickered, and the figure's eyes darkened slightly. The unsettling words hung in the air, their meaning unclear but undeniably heavy. "For centuries," the Vantori continued, "we have avoided your world, not because of your potential for peace, but because of your aggressive nature. The way you, as a species, respond to threats." Humanity, frozen by confusion and disbelief, began to murmur. What did this mean? Was Earth really feared across the stars for its violence? What was the Vantori trying to warn them about? The silence was deafening. The Vantori, seemingly aware of the tension, added one final, chilling line before the transmission cut off. "You are capable of great things, but also capable of destruction beyond measure. We are here to show you the path forward. But be warned, the universe is watching. And if you strike first, you may not be able to stop." The figure disappeared, leaving behind a galaxy of unanswered questions, and a world about to come to terms with a startling truth about itself. The Vantori's words lingered in the air long after their transmission had ended. Across the globe, humanity's leaders and citizens alike were left grappling with the revelation. In every major city, people turned to their screens for more information, searching for meaning in the alien's cryptic message. The United Nations called an emergency session, the heads of state gathering via virtual communications, each face more troubled than the last. But it wasn't just the politicians who were reeling. Scientists, historians, and military officials around the world scrambled to make sense of the Vantori's warning. For the first time in history, Humanity's violent history was being exposed not just as a flaw, but as a defining trait, a reputation that stretched far beyond Earth's atmosphere. Hours after the transmission, Earth's scientists and translators had managed to decode the full meaning of the Vantori's message. They discovered that the alien race had been monitoring Earth for centuries, long before humanity had even developed the technology to reach the stars. The Vantori's vast surveillance network had tracked humanity's rise through history, from the First World Wars to the cold nuclear standoff that had nearly ended civilization. Their data showed that Earth had never once responded to an external threat with anything other than swift and overwhelming aggression. Amazingly, this reputation had spread far and wide across the galaxy. While Earth had been a young, isolated planet, its name had already been whispered in corridors of alien civilizations, described as the Hornet's nest, a species that, when disturbed, would retaliate with a force unmatched by any other species in the known universe. Even peaceful species like the Vantori had learned to keep their distance, unwilling to risk igniting humanity's explosive response. The most shocking revelation, however, was not that humanity had earned this reputation. It was why. The Vantori's records showed a striking pattern. Humans didn't simply defend themselves. No, what set them apart from every other species was that humans reacted with a ferocity that was unpredictable, even against overwhelming odds. If a human colony was attacked, they didn't merely fight back. They struck hard, fast, and with an almost primal urge to push back at any force that dared to threaten them. The Vantori showed human leaders footage from the early 21st century. There, on screen, were human explorers in space, defenseless against the advanced alien ships that had encountered them. But instead of cowering, humans fought with all they had, even if it meant risking everything. And they won. The same thing happened on Mars, on the Moon, and during first contact with other distant species. Earthlings had a history of retaliating in ways that no other species had ever dared. They were unpredictable, and unpredictable species were dangerous. As the full scope of the revelation sank in, global reactions were mixed. Some were proud. There was a strange sense of honor in being known as a species that had never backed down. Many in the military, and even some politicians, began to see the Hornet's nest as a badge of pride. Humanity wasn't weak. Humanity had fought its way through every challenge, from wars to plagues, and had come out stronger. But others were alarmed. They wondered what this aggressive reputation meant for their future. What if the Vantori weren't alone in fearing humanity? What if other, more dangerous civilizations saw Earth's fighting spirit not as a strength, but as a threat? For the first time in history, humanity was faced with a dilemma. Were they to embrace their ferocious nature, or strive for peace and diplomacy in a universe filled with far more powerful, dangerous forces? As the debate grew, the Vantori returned to Earth's communications channels. They had more to reveal. Humanity's reputation was not just an observation, it was a warning. The universe, they explained, was vast, and to thrive in it, humanity would need to learn more than how to fight back. They would need to learn restraint. In a final transmission, the Vantori's voice echoed again, quieter this time, but still chillingly clear. You are capable of great things, humanity. But beware, what you call a hornet's nest could quickly become your tomb if you do not learn how to control your stinger. The broadcast ended, leaving the world with more questions than answers. What did they truly want from humanity? And what path would they choose now, knowing that their identity was no longer just a reflection of their past, but a key to their future? The world was in turmoil. Every nation had its own reaction to the Vantori's message, but one thing was certain. No one could ignore what they'd heard. Across every platform, from the largest news networks to small social media threads, the phrase "Hornet's Nest" echoed through humanity's collective consciousness like a warning bell. In the days that followed, the implications of the Vantori's revelation started to sink in. Global leaders convened to discuss Earth's future role in the galaxy, but the debate was fractured. Some saw the nickname as a source of pride. "We fight back when cornered. It's what makes us resilient," said General Maria Denton, one of Earth's most prominent military leaders. Her words resonated with millions who viewed humanity's aggressive spirit as the very thing that had allowed them to survive wars, plagues, and even the near extinction of the human race. The hornet's nest, they argued, wasn't just a description. It was a testament to human perseverance. It was humanity's defiance against any force, no matter how large. But others saw it as a curse. "Aggression may have kept us alive in the past," said Dr. Julian Moreau, a leading peace advocate, "but it has also brought us to the brink of annihilation. We can't continue down this path." He and other diplomats warned that Earth's reckless nature would only attract enemies far beyond the Vantori's understanding. The universe was a far more dangerous place than anyone could comprehend, and while Earth's aggression might have allowed them to survive, it could easily destroy them in a galaxy teeming with more advanced and less forgiving species. Public opinion split, with some nations rallying behind the military faction's idea of using their newfound reputation as a form of power, while others pushed for an urgent shift toward diplomacy. The debate was fierce, with no clear solution in sight. Meanwhile, in the quieter corners of Earth, where history and culture were studied, a more introspective conversation took place. Scholars, historians, and anthropologists began to dig deeper into humanity's past, searching for clues to why humans had developed such an aggressive response to conflict. The records they uncovered were startling. Humanity's history of aggression was not a simple matter of defense. It was as if Earth's very survival instinct had been built upon the idea of overcoming rather than enduring. In every war, revolution, and battle, humans had fought to win, not just survive. They fought for domination, for expansion, for progress, and often with an intensity that stunned those who stood against them. The earliest days of humanity were marked by constant internal conflict, with tribes and nations locked in a cycle of war that lasted for millennia. Even in times of peace, when humans had the chance to build alliances and cooperative structures, they still harbored a deep distrust of other species. The idea that any other civilization could outlast them, or even coexist peacefully with them, was a difficult pill to swallow. This mindset had not just been forged in the crucible of conflict, but had been woven into the very fabric of humanity's psyche. To be human was to compete, to conquer, to overcome. Even now, as humans stood on the brink of intergalactic contact, their instinct was to fight first and ask questions later. The more the scholars uncovered, the more troubling the truth became. The hornet's nest metaphor wasn't just about human nature. It was humanity's Achilles heel. It wasn't enough for Earth to win the battle. They had to become the battle. And this aggressive spirit, while powerful, was also their greatest weakness. If Earth wanted to take its place in the galaxy, they would have to learn to curb this instinct, to move beyond their instinctive urge to strike first. In the quiet of the night, amid these growing tensions, a growing realization settled over many of Earth's brightest minds. The Vantori were right. Humanity's identity was inextricably tied to its past, to its centuries of violence and conflict. But for the first time, they had a choice. The galaxy had noticed them, not for their potential to create, but for their raw, untamed force. What would they do with that knowledge? The realization was sobering. If humanity was to thrive, they would have to evolve, to redefine themselves, not just for the stars, but for the survival of their own species. But could they truly change, or would they remain forever defined by the legacy of their own aggression? The world held its breath, waiting for the answer. The tension on Earth continued to rise, but in the midst of the global debate, the Vantori reappeared, this time with a far more urgent message. For weeks, the alien race had been silent, allowing humanity to wrestle with the implications of their words. But now, as the world teetered between pride and fear, the Vantori's next transmission hit like a cold wind. This time, there was no grand ceremony, no holographic figure standing before the world. Instead, the message was broadcast directly into every living room, every device on Earth. The alien voice, calm yet filled with a somber weight, cut through the air. You have misunderstood the true nature of your reputation. It is not a source of pride. It is a warning. The word sent shockwaves through humanity. For the first time since contact had been made, it seemed the Vantori were no longer simply observers. They were becoming active participants, urging Earth to confront its place in the universe. We come to you not as conquerors, but as messengers, the Vantori continued. The galaxy is vast, and many species, like us, have watched you with both awe and trepidation. But there are others, beasts and empires that see your aggression not as resilience, but as a threat to their very survival. The transmission shifted, and Earth's screens were flooded with images of starscapes, ships, and alien worlds humanity had never seen. But what caught everyone's attention was the unmistakable presence of a massive fleet of ships, unlike any Earth had ever encountered. Their design was jagged, brutal, designed for war, for destruction. The Vantori had accessed intelligence from across the galaxy, showing Earth the stark truth. A vast number of civilizations feared humanity's unpredictability and their ability to strike with little provocation. The Vantori had not only been watching Earth, they had been waiting. The Skarn Collective, the Vantori's voice warned, are one such civilization. They are a race of conquerors, driven by a single purpose: to wipe out any species they deem to be a threat to their expansion. They have learned of you and your reputation. They believe the Hornet's nest can be crushed, and they will come to test your resolve. If you strike first, they will retaliate with a force that will destroy your world. Images of the Skarn fleet flashed across the screen. Gleaming ships the size of continents, armed to the teeth, their alien warriors encased in armor that seemed to shimmer with malice. The sheer size of their force was enough to make Earth's military look like ants in comparison. It was a terrifying display, one that made it clear humanity was vastly outmatched. The Vantori's voice softened, but the weight of their words only grew heavier. We are not your enemies, Earth. We have stayed away because we understand your nature, but there are others who will not. You must understand that your aggression, while powerful, is a double-edged sword. The Skarn Collective, like others, see your actions as a signal, a challenge, and if you provoke them, you will bring destruction not just to yourselves, but to everything you hold dear. The transmission paused, as though the Vantori were giving Earth a moment to absorb the gravity of their words. Then they added one final warning. Your reputation precedes you. You may have won battles on Earth, but the war for your survival is just beginning. If you continue to respond as you always have, instinctively, impulsively, you will doom yourselves to extinction. For the first time, humanity was being forced to confront its true place in the universe, not just as a planet with potential, but as a species that might well be destroyed by its own unchecked aggression. The world went silent. The message had shaken the very foundations of what it meant to be human. There were those who were defiant, who refused to believe that Earth could ever be outmatched. But there were others who realized that the path ahead wasn't just about surviving. It was about evolving. In every corner of the planet, from the highest towers of power to the quiet homes where families sat huddled around their screens, the same question echoed in the minds of all. What would humanity do next? And for the first time, they didn't have the answer. The weight of the Vantori's warning settled heavily across the globe. For days, no one spoke of anything else. From the streets of bustling cities to the halls of government, humanity was caught in a collective paralysis, unsure of what to do next. The images of the Skarn Collective, their ships like massive gleaming teeth in the dark vastness of space, haunted the minds of those who had seen them. The Vantori's words echoed in every corner of society. If you strike first, you will bring destruction upon yourselves. For some, it was clear that Earth's future was at a crossroads. There were still factions that called for a show of strength, that wanted to prove humanity could not be cowed. Military leaders pushed for immediate action, pointing to Earth's history of survival through sheer willpower and force. General Denton, a staunch advocate of humanity's aggressive nature, began making public speeches about preparing Earth for a war, urging world leaders to unite against the looming threat. "We will not go down without a fight," she declared in a televised address, standing in front of a fleet of Earth's finest ships. "Humanity has always prevailed when we stood together. This is no different. We face an enemy, but it is an enemy that will come to fear us." Her words were met with thunderous applause in some quarters, especially among those who still believed that Earth's reputation as the Hornet's nest was a mark of honor. But others were less certain, their fear growing as they listened to the increasingly belligerent rhetoric from Earth's military leaders. Scientists, diplomats, and peace advocates had formed a growing coalition that advocated for restraint, urging world governments to negotiate with the Vantori and seek a path that avoided violence. Dr. Julian Moreau, now an increasingly vocal figure in global politics, publicly denounced the military stance. "This is not our fight to start," he said, his voice filled with urgency. "We have been warned. The Scarn Collective will not show mercy. If we strike first, we will not only doom ourselves, we will destroy any hope for peace with other races in the galaxy." But the debate raged on. Some nations, already aligned with the more hawkish factions, began ramping up their military readiness. Space stations were fortified, and Earth's fleets gathered in orbit, prepared for any potential invasion. The specter of war loomed ever closer, as the world seemed unable to turn back. In the midst of this turmoil, the Vantori reached out again. But this time, their message was different, less of a warning and more of an offer. A way forward, they promised. They spoke of the ancient ways of diplomacy, of the knowledge they had gathered over eons of exploration. The Vantori knew the galaxy's great powers intimately, and they offered Earth something invaluable: the chance to form alliances, to learn from civilizations far older and wiser, and to avoid the deadly path of conflict. "We are not asking you to give up your power," the Vantori's voice intoned. "But we ask that you grow beyond your instinct to strike first. The Scarn Collective may seem unstoppable, but they are not invincible. If you stand alone, they will destroy you. But if you stand with us, with others who understand the value of peace, you will have allies. Your true power will come from unity, not from war." The call for peace was persuasive, but it fell on deaf ears in some parts of the world. The militaristic factions saw only weakness in the idea of submitting to the Vantori's council. They argued that Earth would lose its autonomy, that the galaxy's older civilizations would impose their will on humanity, and that any surrender of aggression would be seen as a sign of fragility. However, the pro-peace coalition had its own advocates, growing louder as they pointed to the obvious truth. Humanity had come to a crossroads. They could choose the path of aggression and risk extinction, or they could choose the path of diplomacy and hope for a future in the stars. As the global conversation reached a fever pitch, a surprising event took place, an unexpected move from Earth's first colony on Mars. The Martian colony, long distanced from Earth's political tensions, sent a powerful message to Earth's leaders. "We choose peace. We choose a future that doesn't end in war." It was a turning point. For the first time, a large part of humanity, outside the traditions of Earth, had taken a stand for something new. Could their message tip the scales? The world waited, as the voices of reason began to slowly rise above the clamor of militarism. The question was no longer about if humanity could defend itself. It was about how humanity would choose to face the future. Would it strike first, or would it rise to meet the stars with something more than aggression? The message from Mars, a colony that had long been isolated from Earth's political storms, resonated far beyond the red planet. It wasn't just a statement of peace. It was a call to action, a clear stance that humanity could choose a different path. For the first time since the Vantori's warning, there was a glimmer of hope, a chance that Earth could overcome its instinctual drive for conflict. On Earth, the reaction was mixed. Many military factions, entrenched in their belief that humanity's survival depended on strength, dismissed the Martian message as naive. "They live in a bubble," General Denton said dismissively. "They don't understand what we're up against." For those in power, the idea of bowing to the advice of the Vantori or listening to Mars seemed like a dangerous capitulation. They rallied their forces, preparing for a possible confrontation with the Scarn Collective. But others, those who had listened to Dr. Julian Moreau and the growing pro-peace movement, saw Mars' message as a beacon of light. The shifting tide was unmistakable. Earth was beginning to divide itself not just by nation, but by its future vision. In the halls of the United Nations, discussions became increasingly charged. Some leaders argued for an immediate alliance with the Vantori, following their advice to foster unity and avoid conflict. Others still held firm, insisting that Earth's best course of action was to demonstrate its strength, both to the Scarn Collective and to the galaxy. Among the voices calling for peace was Alina Zorin, a young and rising diplomat from Russia. Zorin had long been a critic of Earth's aggressive stance in space exploration, and now, in the wake of the Vantori's intervention, she found herself at the forefront of a growing movement to shift Earth's policies toward diplomacy. She called for a global summit with the Vantori to discuss their proposal of alliance. She argued that humanity needed to show the galaxy that it could choose cooperation over destruction, that Earth could evolve beyond its historical patterns of violence. "The Scarn Collective are dangerous, but they are not invincible," she said during a press conference, her words carrying the weight of years of thought. "The Vantori have offered us a path that doesn't involve destruction. If we want to thrive in the stars, we must prove we are capable of something greater than our past." Zorin's appeal to reason gained traction, particularly among the younger generations who had grown up hearing the stories of humanity's triumphs and tragedies, but who also yearned for a different kind of future. In university halls and think tanks, the notion of cooperation was taking root. "Peace is not weakness" became a rallying cry for a new wave of leaders, thinkers, and activists. Across Earth, the idea that the old ways of thinking might be outdated, even dangerous, began to gain momentum. Yet the military still loomed large. General Denton's calls for readiness were echoed by many of her counterparts. The message from Mars had not swayed them. "You cannot negotiate with an enemy that sees your survival as a threat," said Admiral Gregor Klein, a veteran of Earth's interstellar defense. "The Vantori are not wrong about our history, but they don't understand what we face. If we give in to their vision, we are giving up everything that makes us human." And so, as the debate raged on, the question that had been hanging in the air for weeks began to crystallize. Could humanity truly abandon its instinct for survival at any cost? Could Earth choose peace in the face of an unknown and potentially annihilating threat? The Vantori watched from afar, their transmissions growing quieter, perhaps more expectant. They had given humanity a chance to step back from the brink, but the Vantori could not choose for Earth. They could only guide. In the coming days, a historic decision would be made, one that would shape not only humanity's future, but its place in the cosmos. And for the first time in history, the choice between destruction and diplomacy was entirely in humanity's hands. The path was uncertain, but the possibility of peace, of a future free from the endless cycle of violence, was now more than just a dream. It was a choice that had to be made, and it would come sooner than anyone could have imagined. The decision had finally been made. The global summit would take place in a matter of days, and it would be the defining moment for Earth's future. Leaders from every nation, every faction, were summoned to meet at a newly constructed space station orbiting Earth. The Vantori had agreed to host the summit, offering their neutral ground in space as the location for the historic talks. It was, in essence, humanity's last chance to avoid the path of destruction. The world's media coverage was unparalleled. Broadcasts from across the globe filled homes and streets with anticipation. Earth was no longer the isolated planet it had been just a few years ago. It was a small, fledgling member of an ever-expanding universe, a universe that was watching, waiting for humanity's next move. Would they continue to act on the impulses of their violent history, or would they seize the opportunity to prove their potential for peace? Inside the space station, the air was thick with tension. Delegates arrived in waves, from the diplomatic heavyweights who had fought for peace to the military commanders who still believed in humanity's ability to dominate. The station's corridors buzzed with heated discussions, with passionate voices raised over strategy and policy. Earth's future wasn't just being debated in boardrooms, it was being debated in every corner of society. General Denton arrived, her eyes cold and resolute, flanked by her military advisors. She had made it clear in interviews and speeches that she believed peace was a fragile, fleeting illusion. "We can't afford to show weakness," she repeated time and again, her stance unwavering. "We cannot let our survival be determined by the whims of those who think they know what's best for us." Dr. Julian Moreau, the leading voice of the pro-peace coalition, also made his way to the station, though his demeanor was one of cautious optimism. He had spent the past weeks rallying support, but he knew the battle wasn't just political, it was ideological. Humanity's instinct for survival, deeply rooted in its history, had to be challenged if peace was to be achieved. Once the representatives were seated in the summit's main chamber, the Vantori made their appearance. This time, they were not the silent observers of earlier transmissions. Their holographic forms appeared before the assembly, tall, ethereal, their presence both commanding and serene. The Vantori leader, a being known as Soulhair, addressed the room. "We stand before you today, not as conquerors, but as witnesses to your potential," Soulhair began, his voice calm and soothing, but also filled with an undeniable weight. "We offer you a chance to change your destiny, a path toward coexistence and collaboration that will not only preserve your species, but elevate you beyond the cycle of violence that has defined you for so long." The Vantori's message was clear. The galaxy was full of civilizations that had long since learned the necessity of cooperation. Their strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the capacity to build. Soulhair spoke of the Skarn Collective, explaining that while they were a formidable force, their aggression was a reaction to fear, a fear that Earth's violent reputation had now amplified. "The Skarn do not fear your strength, Earth," he explained. "They fear your unpredictability. You are a species that strikes first without warning, and that is a threat they cannot tolerate." Humanity's leaders, their faces a mixture of fear, pride, and skepticism, listened in silence. General Denton was unmoved. "You want us to lay down our weapons, to risk everything on a gamble that other species will cooperate with us?" She shot back, her voice filled with defiance. "This isn't about peace. It's about survival. You want us to turn our back on the very thing that has kept us alive." Dr. Moreau, sensing the growing divide, stood. "It's not about turning our backs on survival," he said, his voice firm but calm. "It's about choosing how we survive. Do we continue to survive by destroying those who threaten us, or do we choose to live among the stars as a species that understands the value of cooperation, of trust?" The Vantori are offering us that chance. The debate was fierce, the atmosphere charged with emotion. Earth's leaders, divided as they were, began to realize something crucial. The galaxy was watching not just their military power or political strategies, but their willingness to change. The Hornet's nest reputation had placed them at the center of the universe's attention, but whether that attention would lead to their annihilation or their ascension depended entirely on the decisions made in that room. As the hours passed and the summit continued, the question hung heavy in the air. Could humanity step away from its violent history? Could they embrace peace in a galaxy where survival often meant domination? The answer seemed more uncertain than ever. The final moments of the summit would determine the future of Earth. Every leader, every diplomat, every citizen of the planet was waiting for one final decision. The summit entered its final hours. The air in the chamber felt thick, as if the weight of the galaxy's expectations bore down on humanity. Delegates from every corner of Earth, representing nations and ideologies that had clashed for centuries, sat in tense silence. The Vantori remained as ethereal as ever, their presence an ever-present reminder of the choice Earth was about to make. General Denton, her jaw set in defiance, leaned forward in her seat, eyes locked on Dr. Julian Moreau, who had just finished delivering yet another impassioned plea for peace. "We can choose our future," Dr. Moreau's voice echoed across the chamber. "Our strength lies not in our ability to fight, but in our capacity to evolve beyond the violent instincts that have defined us for millennia. We are being offered a chance to stand with allies who see potential in us, who believe we can become something greater than we have ever been." General Denton's gaze hardened. "We have survived through strength. You ask us to trade that for trust, a trust we have never seen from others. If we disarm now, if we show even the slightest hesitation, we doom ourselves. History has shown us what happens when we back down." The debate was fierce, each word sharp and charged with emotion. The pro-peace coalition, led by Moreau and Zorin, pushed forward, offering rational arguments and appeals to humanity's potential. The war hawks, led by Denton and her military allies, refused to relent, clinging to the belief that only through force could Earth secure its place in the cosmos. As the clock ticked toward the final moments, Solhair, the Vantori leader, spoke again, his voice a soothing but powerful presence. "We did not come to command you, Earth. We came because we see your potential. But the choice is yours. If you continue to follow the path of violence, if you strike first, you will draw the Skarn Collective to your door, and you will face their wrath, along with the wrath of others who see your aggression as a threat." There was a heavy pause. The room held its breath. Every leader knew the stakes. Earth's reputation, its very survival, hung in the balance. Then, unexpectedly, it was Mars that broke the silence. Alina Zorin, who had been quietly observing the fierce rhetoric, stood. Her voice was calm but resolute as she addressed the chamber. "We chose peace because we believe that humanity can be more. Mars has faced its own challenges, its own struggles to survive. But we've learned that survival alone isn't enough. If we are to be part of this galaxy, we must rise above our old instincts. We are no longer just a single planet. We are a species that has reached out beyond our own world. We must prove we can exist among the stars without resorting to the old ways." Her words cut through the tension like a blade, and for a brief moment, the entire chamber was still. Earth's leaders, the military commanders, even General Denton, were taken aback. It wasn't just a plea for peace. It was a call to action, a reminder that Earth was no longer just fighting for its own survival. It was fighting for a place in the larger cosmos. Denton, though reluctant, stood. The decision, she knew, was no longer just about Earth's defense. It was about whether humanity could evolve beyond its history. She took a deep breath, her hands clenched at her sides. "If we are to do this," she said, her voice steady despite the tension, "we must stand together. No more division, no more factions. For humanity to thrive in the galaxy, we must be united." It was a turning point. A single sentence, spoken not by a diplomat, but by a military leader, shifted the atmosphere in the room. The military leaders, though wary, nodded in agreement. The divisions that had seemed insurmountable were beginning to close, and for the first time in the summit's proceedings, a sense of unity began to take hold. The final vote was cast. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would choose peace. They would choose to trust in the Vantori's offer, to form alliances with other races, to abandon their past of violence and fear, and to stand united in the face of an uncertain future. Earth would join the galactic community, not as an unpredictable force of destruction, but as a species capable of growth and cooperation. The moment the vote was announced, the chamber erupted into applause. It wasn't a perfect resolution, and many still harbored doubts. But it was a beginning, a declaration that Earth's future would no longer be defined by its past mistakes. As the summit concluded, the Vantori extended their hand, offering Earth a path forward. With their guidance, humanity would be mentored, not only in survival, but in building a future that would ensure their place in the stars. The Skarn Collective, while still a looming threat, would now face Earth's united front. Not as a divided, aggressive species, but as a world determined to carve a new path. For the first time, humanity stood on the precipice of a new era, not one defined by conflict, but by possibility. The galaxy had watched as Earth chose its future, and in that moment, the stars no longer seemed so distant. Humanity had taken its first step into the wider universe, and the hornet's nest had finally learned to quiet its sting.